All right. I want to welcome everyone to another episode of the Shadows Podcast, episode 99, inching so close to episode 100, where we will be here next week with the Kyoto brothers. They have been in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Gremlins, Critters, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. They have done some amazing work. It was a really fun interview that I conducted with them, so I cannot wait for that one to drop next Monday. But this week, we have a returning guest. He is a two-time Shadows or guest here on the show. He was on Rise from the Shadows episode 1 that we released back in August. He was actually our first briefer for that series, Behind the Mask, and now he's here today. Clay Smeltzer. He is the founder of Purpose Infused Brotherhood. Got a good podcast going on. Welcome to the Shadows.
Hey, thanks, Trip. I appreciate being here and being the second time here. It's awesome. I love their conversation every time, so I'm ready. Let it rip.
Yeah. If they're watching on YouTube, they can see, but I was like, man, your background looks so nice that it looks fake.
No, it's real. It's just don't look over here to my left. I got a whole bunch of stuff over here.
Mine's kind of cluttered too in the back, but you got to have personality when you do these. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let our listeners know where you're located.
I'm in Pennsylvania, so I live in South Central Pennsylvania in York County, and so I grew up there. I grew up in the woods of Pennsylvania, and I'm a country boy at heart. And then for me, I learned a lot of stuff in the woods, man.
Okay.
All right. Good stuff. Maybe a lot of not so great stuff.
Okay. Sounds kind of Ted Kaczynski-ish when you say but before we jump into your upbringings in the woods of Pennsylvania, let's put you through the 5 fearful 5 questions.
Let's do it.
First one. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. What's something you're thankful for?
Me, I'm thankful for each day, honestly. You know what I mean? When I wake up, and I think that's one of the biggest things for me is when I wake up, I'm always grateful because I didn't used to be that way. I'd wake up going, ugh, I have to do this. I wake up now and go, I get to do this today.
It's weird you say that. I just read a book this morning, Peace Index by Jeremy Kubicek, who's coming up on the show, and he said that's a big thing is people, you're really at peace with yourself when you get to say, I get to do this versus I have to do this.
Yep.
So
it is a great freeing feeling.
Yeah. Okay. Serious question here. Die Hard, is it a Christmas movie or no?
It's both. It's an action and Christmas movie. Come on now.
All right. There you go. We have it. All right. Next one, book recommendation for our listeners.
Outwitting the Devil.
Outwitting the Devil
by Napoleon Hill. If you have not read that, you need to. And it's mind blowing just because it was written in 1932 or something like that, 80 some years later, and just the premises of it all and the big picture of it, man, it's just I'm sitting here recurring everything that happened, like I read. And I'm still just even now, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just blows your mind. Like, oh, wow.
Okay. Wow. Outwitting the Devil.
Yes, sir.
All right. What is a fear that you have?
Me, I think the biggest fear of mine, I've conquered a lot of them. One of the things that I fear now is like something that would happen to my kids that I can't control. That's one. So when it comes to like my kids and my wife, and I can't, either I'm not there or something happens, that's a big fear of mine.
Okay. Yeah. I think any parent or spouse, that's definitely a go-to. What is there anything like insects or heights?
I don't like heights that much.
Really?
I'll do some of it. Like I would rather jump out of an airplane probably. Now my anxiety levels would go through the roof.
Yeah.
But I would probably jump out of an airplane before I went to the top of the Empire State Building.
So you're out in the woods. You wouldn't climb the trees or climb the mountains.
I'll climb the tree.
Okay.
Now, when I get some on the mountains, if I get up on that side, okay, all right, now I'll climb some trees. But when you get to like a place where it's like you're up there and I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. If I got this over the edge thing, if I'm looking over the edge, that's like my wife is like, let's go on a cruise. I'm like, I think it's really high up there.
Yeah.
And it's a small space. And I'm like, I can't. If I want to get away, like I can't.
You got nowhere to go there.
Over the side. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good option.
I went to the Grand Canyon and actually like looked over the side, and see the little rocks falling, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. But I've said it several times here on the podcast. I'll even grab a spider from around the house and hold it in my hand. It does nothing to me. For whatever reason, if I see a lizard,
Okay.
I can't do it. Can't explain it. I know it's irrational, but yeah.
No, I can't. My mom is snakes. Even if you're just, if I do this with my finger, I'm like, she's like, no, knock it off, knock it off. So I don't,
I'm fine with snakes. I had to Google it the other day to see if there was anything wrong with me for that. Last question. Dinner for three with three historical figures who are no longer with us. This has become kind of a staple here on the Shadows. Who would your three be?
I would say one's gonna have to be George Washington. I mean, he's George Washington. I mean, yeah. crazy smart dude. I would say him. I would say also Ben Franklin, because he was just the way he communicated and was able to make deals to do the things, and an inventor in his mind was absolutely incredible. A third person, dead or alive, doesn't matter.
No longer with us. So they're
no longer with us. Okay, yep. No longer with us. Who would be that third one? Dang. That one got me stumped.
Got a musician or a comedian that comes to mind?
I mean, I would love to sit around and play some music with Johnny Cash. That'd be awesome.
Okay. Johnny Cash can provide the entertainment.
He could provide the entertainment. We'll get a little, I like a little Johnny Cash. No, that'd be good. So you got that. That would be very interesting. Ben Franklin, George Washington, and Johnny Cash.
That's a solid dinner right there.
We'd be eating steak and potatoes. That's for sure.
That needs to be the follow-up question for that when I ask it is, then what would you eat? So
steak, nice, and potatoes.
Okay.
Got it.
Well, you survived the fearful 5 questions here, and now we're going to actually jump into your story. So you mentioned you grew up York, Pennsylvania, out in the woods. What was childhood like for Clay Smeltzer? What did your parents do? What was the family dynamics?
My mom didn't work until I probably went to kindergarten or first grade, something like that. My dad worked at a grocery store. I don't know how he paid for anything because he worked at a grocery store. He was the dairy manager, and so we didn't grow up with money. I grew up in a trailer, a single wide trailer in the woods, and I loved it. I was the kid that growing up too, like we had the woods. I was the youngest out of everybody around us. So my house sit on top of the hill. My aunt was next to us with our 2 little cousins. And then down at the bottom of the hill was my grandpa. So he owned the whole entire valley. And then across down the valley and up the other hill in the next valley was my cousin, my other cousin on the same side of the family. And we just played in the woods, man. But I was the brunt of the punishment. So I was the dude that was, my brother's 3 years older than I am. Then my cousin's 3 years older than that. All of our friends are around were either my brother's age or 3 years older. So it was always pick on. I was duct taped to a lot of things.
That's a big gap there.
Yeah. I was duct taped to sleds. I was duct taped to, that big wheel.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 small, I was duct taped to one of those, sent down the hill. I was the brunt of the punishment, but I think what it did I was always trying to be being part of the crowd, not the crowd, but I wanted to make the team. Mm-hmm. And so that made me tougher. Like, those guys picked on me like nobody's business, but in the end, it's a reason why I go and I push as hard as I do. The reason why I feel like I'm as tough as I am. The reason why I can handle certain things that I think other people can't. That I will. I know I don't necessarily like the word grind, but I'll grind through it if I need to. And so forth. I think when you get to athletics and the way I played was because a lot of the things I went through growing up, being that younger kid, the younger guy just trying to make the team. I remember we built this fort, dude. This fort was awesome, man. So in the woods, you just build a whole bunch of stuff. It was like,
you think
about the Civil War, and they made those like picket fences and all that kind of stuff that were all, dude, we even made a catapult, dude. This thing was awesome. Like you could jump on the end of it and throw a whole bunch of stuff. So
y'all had like an Ewok village at this point.
yeah, seriously. It was awesome. It was amazing. It was the best thing we've ever built. So we get around the huddle. It was me, my brother, and like 5 other people are like, all right. My brother's like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. Clay, you go down to the bottom of the hill and then you run us, we'll stay up here. And you attack us, and then we'll chuck stuff down at you and see if you can get to the fort. If you get to the fort, you win. Now, just because you're by yourself, if we get hit once, we're out. If you get hit, you can get hit 3 times. Here's a football helmet. Go get it. And I'm like, what the? Like, I'm like, this is BS. So I'm like, I'm charging this hill. But here's what it did, though. I get down to the bottom of the hill, and I was just so mad. I'm like, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. And, all this stuff flinging down through. I mean, there's basketballs and rocks and trees flying down. Like I'm dodging these things, and this rock hits me on the helmet. I still remember that. It was like that football helmet ping with a rock.
Was that the little Sears football helmets?
Yeah, like the old school ones. Like you actually fit on your head, but it was
still get CTE like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was horrible. And but they gave it to me because that was the nice thing to do as the only one running up the hill, attacking the fort of 4 other people. So that day I actually made it, and I got over the wall. Now I know I hit them more than once for a lot of things because I was chucking stuff back at them too. But I made it over the wall, and then I got the crap beat out of me. And that's how it worked, But it's like, I was like, I made it. And they're like, yeah, But I think one of the things is like my mentality was like, okay, like, let's go. Like game on. And I think that's where it really started to build for me, is like, hey, if life's going to give me something, I'm going to take it head on. I'm not going to start off to the side. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to take it head on. I'm going to go after it because I know I have what it takes to make the fort. I know what I have have what it takes to even though I'm the underdog, I know I have what it takes to make it happen. And I think that's one of the things that's just really pushed me through. So I grew up like that for most of my life. And, being I was never ashamed that I lived in a trailer in the woods. I was always like, well, yeah, sure. It's my house. You know what I mean? Like we didn't grow up with money. I was a kid on a basketball team that didn't have the same shoes, and I didn't care because my shoes didn't make me play well. I did. So, growing up money wise, we didn't have a bunch, but we had what we needed. Yeah. And that's what was count. And so family was very important to us. Like I say, we all lived in kind of the same area there, on my mom's side. And, there's so many things that my grandpa passed this past year, that lived down below in the hollow. And, so many things I learned from him and took away from him because we were that close, and we did have that opportunity to go down there and be with him and learn from him and grow from him and become men because of him. And I think that's one of the things is, in my life, like my mom I saw a strong woman because she didn't care, and I think that's why I didn't care. Like, I didn't care. Like my wife, we grew up similar. She grew up in town. I grew up in the woods, but she grew up not with money too, but she was more of ashamed about growing up poor, where I was like, I didn't give a shit. But I also had a mom that was like, I don't care. She's like, I like my house,
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of way I took it too. I was like, man, I love growing up in that trailer. Like, I'm like, I loved it. It was great, except for that stupid owl that you heard at 3 a.m. that sounded like it was in my bedroom. But, but other than that, it was great. So I had parents that were loving, that were caring, that were hard, but they pushed us to be the best, and they gave us the opportunity to choose. And sometimes we chose wrong, and sometimes we chose right, but they allowed us to live and experience.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that was hard. As talking with my mom now and talking with my dad now with our kids, that was hard for them to do, but I'm glad they gave us the opportunity to find out who we actually are instead of saying, hey, here's what you have to be, or here's this, or, hey, I'm going to shove you in this box. And well, that doesn't work out well for me.
It's crazy to hear your story. And, the cool thing about this podcast is hearing how our childhoods and our upbringings really shaped us into who we are today. And hearing like yours, like I'm the same way. Like it was, getting banged up and bruised and beat up and learning the hard way and my childhood shaped a lot of who I am as well.
Yeah.
And it makes you think where we are in a society now where it's, I get guilty of it with my daughter.
Yeah.
We try to bubble wrap them and protect them for everything. But it also makes you wonder, like, God, are they going to be as mentally tough, as physically tough as we were? But you mentioned your grandfather, and sorry to hear that about his passing. What are some of the things that you really learned from him? You mentioned that you got a lot from your time with him. What are some things that you see today that you do that you really took away?
Man, I think one of the things I see is that we don't like, I love my dad. I love my grandpa. My other grandpa just wasn't, he's what he was. And, but my dad and my mom's dad, grandpa, man, they taught me a lot. Now, there wasn't any necessarily initiation process. And I think that's in society, that's what we're missing. And that's one of the things as the brotherhood work that we do, we're bringing back. I started an initiation process with my son at 8 years old. He's 10 now. So that's what we're actually bringing dads in to do. But why? Because it was so important that I learned from my dad and from my grandpa. Like, I learned how to hunt. I learned how to cut wood. I learned now sometimes the things that they taught us weren't that great, you know what I mean? But like I learned the value of hard work. But what I did, I grew up in blue collar Pennsylvania. So the bad side of that value of hard work was you work your ass off and then shut up and just do it, and then everything will be great. Well, that's not true. That's false. Because I've done that and it hasn't worked out, and it's left me at positions in my life where I'm like, what is going on with my life? But I did learn a value of hard work. Like I'm not afraid to outwork anybody. Like, and that's good. I think it's a great quality. And I think one of those things, like, so my dad taught me hard work. He was a high school football and baseball coach too. Things I've taken away from him that I didn't know then that I know now that I use. I'm like, wow. But my grandpa, he was a fourth generation carpenter. And it's like, so we went to work, we went to help out. He was the soft but strong. And he didn't swear. I think I heard him like swear twice in his life. But he would just give you that soft, and you knew he's like, Clay, no, we're gonna do this right now, right? And I'm like, yes, Papal. Because you're just like, it wasn't like more of the like it was this soft strength that was just so powerful. When we had his celebration, and lots of family came around and friends and stuff like that, he still has to this day, because he had his own construction company as well. He still has to this day so many people saying, hey, here's what John did, and it was that soft strength. And my grandpa, I always talk about like purpose, like, what's your purpose, Trip? Every listener here, what's your purpose? Because what your purpose is not what you do, it's who you are. And my grandpa was the soft strength. He was that creative person, and he was a teacher, and he just taught. He taught, and that taught was love. And every single person that got up to talk that day was talking about the same thing. So when you go and you leave behind, like we went in part of one of the challenges that I do now that I have guys go through is one of those is a funeral activity. And I say, what are people going to say about your funeral? And a lot of it based upon that. Like, I heard all these people say exact same thing about my grandpa. It exactly the same thing what I knew about my grandpa and who he was. And that's powerful, man, because he lived that every single day. He lived that. He woke up, he stepped across that line, and he lived his purpose every single day, no matter where he was at. And that's one of the things that to celebrate my grandpa's life, my papa's life, is to live my purpose every day, and which is to own myself, love my story, and live with purpose and help others do that. Like that's mine every single day. So when I step across that line, I know what my line is. And when I step across it, my job is to give it every single thing I got that day, because shit, I don't know if I got another one. So if I don't, I left it all in the field. That is actually a teaching from my dad as a high school football and baseball coach, which I didn't get then. I'm just like, yeah, you get pumped up. But 20 years later, I'm going, holy shit. Dang, Dad. I'm like, nailed it, man, because that's literally what I do. I woke up and I'm meaning to get off task, but anyways, I woke up every day with that, dang, I have to do this. And I woke up, my feet hit the ground, and I just ran 55 million miles per hour. I don't do that anymore. I don't put my feet on that line. My feet hitting the ground is my line. And the reason why I say that is because my dad used to line us up. So take the baseball field to the third baseline. He would line all the players up on, and when the team done, all the cuts and stuff were done, he'd line us all up. He'd say, look to your right and look to your left. He goes, those are your brothers you're going to compete with. Now look down. He goes, that's the line. He goes, don't step across my line unless you're willing to give it every single thing that you have for yourself and every one of your brothers that stands on this line too. He goes, if you're not willing to do it, don't step across my line. And when we stepped across that line, it meant something. When we hopped over that line, I don't know if you play baseball or not, but you jump over the line. You know what I mean? You don't touch the line, but when you cross that line, you're saying, I'm giving every single thing I got. And I took that into my life because I wasn't doing that. It was so powerful back then. I didn't realize it. But now, every single day I wake up in my bed, obviously I'm looking at the ceiling or the pillow or whatever, but I'm like, man, I got another day. I get another day. And that gratitude fills me up. And I don't put my feet on the line or feet on the ground until I know I'm ready to give every single thing I got. Because my feet hitting the ground that day is me saying, I am willing to give it every single thing I have today. And if not, my ass stays in that bed and I don't get out of it until I'm ready. So.
No, I like it. That grandfather, what you were saying about him, it kind of reminds me of something I heard where if a man has enough power, he can speak softly and everyone will listen. And that with your father, it sounds like the ultimate inspirational motivator, getting you fired up. And I see
oh yeah,
all of that in what you're doing with Purpose Infused Brotherhood, which we'll get to in just a minute. So growing up, what were some of your aspirations?
Man, I was chasing the major leagues, man. That's what I was doing. I got to ninth grade and that was a realization of like, oh shit, like, cause every kid's like, dude, I want to play major league ball.
Oh, I was a number one draft pick in my driveway. I was on track.
Right. And that's where it's like everybody was, you know what I mean? Like major leagues, I'm going to play professional sports. I teach 7th grade math right now too. And it's like, you ask kids, like, what do you want to do when you grow up?
God
or
bless
like,
you for
that. Yeah, I have days. You know, they're like professional. I'm like, what's it going to take? Oh, I don't know. I was like, cause and that's where it's like, I got to 9th grade and I realized, well, shit, like I actually have an opportunity to do this. Like I have an opportunity to, and fortunate enough, I had the work ethic to chase it, chase the major leagues, but also chase the NFL. And I chose major leagues because I was 145 pounds and, that obviously I would have got bigger if I went football, but baseball was my thing, man.
What position?
For baseball? I was a pitcher catcher, so I got recruited for both.
Nice.
So I chose catching because that was my passion, man. And people told me I couldn't do it. And I said, yeah, watch me. And so because at that point in time in 1999, every catcher was the big guy in the team.
Yeah.
And it wasn't some 145-pound dude that can chuck a ball that real fast. But what I loved is I would go to these places. So I spent 4 years from 9th grade to 12th grade working my butt off. Every weekend, I sacrificed a shit ton. I was on that field more than anybody else. I remember shoveling snow off of because my dad had keys to the field. So I shoveled off snow on home plate at the pitcher mound so dad could stand in at second base. And I'm doing my throwdowns, you know what I mean? My times to second, my pops to second. I'm working on stuff. I'm out there. Why? Because I'm going to a showcase or I'm going to a camp or I'm going to this. And I had to be ready. And so I did all of that. People would ask my dad, like, dude, why you got him up here so much? He's like, I don't. I want to go home. He has me up here. But I'm his dad and I'm willing to do that. And I'm like, so that's one of the things is like, I put all of that time and effort into those different things to reach that level because I knew I was willing to do it, but also people told me I couldn't. And I was like, yeah, watch me. And it's like, so it was really nice to go places knowing my hard work paid off when I threw that ball down to second base and people went, no, wait, hold on a second. Like, can you do that again? And I'm like, Sure, why not? Let's do it. Let's let it rip. Pew! And they're like, holy shit, this kid, this 145-pound kid is doing this. It's like, so that was nice to kind of shove it in people's faces that always said you can't. So I always like doing that.
That, or no one else wanted to have the knees of a catcher, and they were like, Clay, we don't think you can do this.
Correct.
But so aspirations of playing baseball, and then when did, like, tell us kind of how that story ended of you had this dream of being a baseball player, and then obviously something hit a roadblock. What was that?
It was injury. I went to college, so I had 75 different offers. I chose to go to Kutztown to catch. Most of them were for pitching. But man, it just, for whatever reason, man, catching was my thing and my jam. And I love the Kutztown area and stuff and so forth. And so I went to play some of the best baseball in the country in the PSAC. And so fall ball went great. Got to spring ball. Yep. A guy I set up outside, guy crossed me up, threw a change. I was supposed to throw a fastball outside, threw a change up inside. So my thumb's exposed. Ended up hyperextending my thumb. Problem is my thumb, if anybody takes their thumb and touches their pinky over here, yours will touch, mine will not, because my bottom knuckle is actually fused together by birth. My mom's the same way. Thanks, Mom. But it's actually, my bottom knuckle doesn't move. So like, when most of the time, if your knuckle moves, it can hyperextend and then come back into place. Well, when mine hyperextended, it didn't hyperextend, it just blew up. Yeah. So I came back. We went to spring break. I caught 10 games down at spring break with it. Broke. I just thought I jammed it. Our other catcher ended up taking a foul ball off of a bat and splitting his throwing arm in half. So he was like a limp noodle. So I was in for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And so I caught 10 games there. By the time, like, my thumb was like, I don't know, it was huge. So I got x-rays, all that kind of stuff. And we're like, dude, it's like broken in two places with it barely like
hanging
freshman on. This is my freshman year.
Year.
So freshman year, spring season, like in the thick of it, we had 62 games left. So what we did is I'm like, all right, cool. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, you shouldn't play. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, major leagues. Great. Thanks for telling me that, Doc. What are we going to do? So I would go to the trainers and we ended up making a cast. I went through 5 different cast models. So we put a cast over my hand. I would shove it up into my glove, wrap it up, all that kind of stuff. I had to go bat. I would take that one off and put one that wrapped around my bat. I'd put that one on. And then when I was done batting, I'd take that one off, put the other one back along with all my gear. So I was known as the thumb guy. So they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm a thumb guy. So it ended up doing that. I caught all 62 games. At the end of the season, it was actually, I caught all 61 games because the second doubleheader of the last game. It was the third inning of the first game of our doubleheader. And all of our pitchers threw in the 90s. A lot of them went major leagues. Dude, I just boom, outside fastball. I hammered that thing for a strike. And the tip, we finally got a cast that worked. And the little bit of tip of my finger was hanging out the end of that cast. And it just split my finger like a Y. The top of my thumb. And I was chucking shit. I was throwing shit over the dugout. It was hitting. I'm taking my gear off, and I just went to the dugout set for the rest of the 2 games. And that was the point where it's like, I couldn't take it anymore. Yeah. The pain. I mean, it was 2 hours worth of rehab to get my hand to work so I could catch every day. And that's bullpens, that's games, that's everything. So I took off the summer. I came back in the fall, did all the prelim stuff, and the doctor's like, dude, you can't, like, you're done, like done. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to the major leagues. So I'm like, obviously I couldn't catch anymore, but I was going to find a way. And so I went back, went at it, but it got to a point where if you underhand tossed the ball to me or when I was swinging a bat, I was actually releasing, because of the pain, I was actually releasing my front hand when it came about right at my belly, right above my belly button. I was releasing my bottom hand, which was my left hand. So I was releasing it when I was swinging. So I was literally swinging one hand with one hand for college base, some of the best baseball. And I'm like, dude, I can't swing a bat. I can't catch a baseball. And I'm like, so one of the hardest decisions, and I still to this day, like I get emotional. Like I get emotional now just talking about it because I knew all the stuff I put into it. And to have that go, to fight for that for so long. I remember standing in high school and just I'm doing my T drills and I'm doing this in the food line to get my lunch, and people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm going to." You look like an idiot. I'm like, "Well, I'm going to major leagues and you're not. So why don't you shut the fuck up?"
Yeah.
Like they're like, I was a jerk back.
I'm getting ready for spring training. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm like, but I had a one-way mind.
Yeah.
Later on down the road, when life happened, down the road, I was talking with one guy and he goes, "Clay, it was awesome that you were able to do that, but you were also looking down the barrel of a straw." And I was like, because the only thing that you could see, you had no peripheral vision. The only thing that you could see is the majors, and that's actually what took you out. And I'm going, oh,
how'd it feel to hear that?
That sucked because that was that, but that was the actual moment I took ownership of it. And that's where does owning myself, loving my story, and living with purpose come from? It's because at 35 years old, I sat on this couch over here having a panic attack over a TV show because I didn't know who Clay Smeltzer was.
Yeah. Tell us about that Game of Thrones.
Yeah. It was the whole door. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh, yeah.
The whole door scene?
Yeah. Hodor.
Yeah. The whole
hold
where
the door.
He actually was holding the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the scene. So the pixie that was inside the tree being surrounded by ice zombies, that's how I felt inside my own head. Is that I was stuck. Everything was falling in. My wife was laying next to me. She was sleeping. I don't know how, but she was. And I'm sweating. I mean, I'm sweating. I'm panicking. Like everything is closing because everything was closing in on that pixie. And it was like, she knew she was dead.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt inside. Like everything is closing in on me. Now, I didn't tell her anything until about 2 days later when I actually was like, listen, I have anxiety all day, every day. I didn't tell people for 15 years of my life. And it started after I stopped playing baseball because I didn't know who I was. Like my identity, Clay chasing the major leagues, was gone. So who was I? Clay Smeltzer college student. Well, that's awesome. That was cool. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it even got to Clay Smeltzer husband, Clay Smeltzer dad.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just still not exciting and those things are amazing, exciting for me now. But back then I was like, still doesn't match Clay Smeltzer chasing the major leagues. What could have been, what it's living in that past.
Yeah.
And then afraid of the future. And that's where I lived for 15 years of my life. Not really telling people exactly who Clay Smeltzer was. I was so afraid to be exposed. That's where we talked about the masks. I wore the Joker's mask. I wore the tough guy's mask. And I was so afraid that the real Clay Smeltzer would be exposed because I knew how Clay Smeltzer felt about the real Clay Smeltzer. And I didn't want other people to feel that way about him either. And it was a mirror. I mirrored everything about me onto everybody else. And I showed everybody else who they wanted to see and not who I really was. And because of that, that ended me at a point in time where I was on that couch going, what the hell is going on with my life?
Yeah.
And the problem is I tried to blame everybody else. I didn't take ownership of it. I wanted to do this, do that. Well, this is happening with this. No, man. Listen, you are exactly where you are in your life because of the choices you have made. And people will be like, Clay, you don't understand. I was like, you're right. I don't understand. I don't have to because it's not my story. It's your story and that you have to know it. And me, I wasn't willing to take ownership for my story. I didn't love my story. I hated it because it wasn't the major leagues. I hated it because I had anxiety. This tough guy had anxiety that deals with it, makes me feel like a big old wuss. Do I struggle with that still? Yeah. Does it make me feel bad, like negative, like a wuss? Yeah. But do I have better coping methods to deal with it now? Absolutely. I don't shame myself for it anymore. Yeah. Which so many years, man, I just shamed myself like you're a puss, like you're a big, like this. If you can't do this for you, how are you going to do it for your wife? How are you going to do it for your kids? And I sat there on that couch that day going, if I can't take care of me, how am I going to take care of the people who are most important to me? The problem is I wasn't. I couldn't. But society and growing up, go back to growing up. Society and growing up told me that I had to be the tough guy, that I had to be.
You're a man.
I had to man up. Just deal with it.
Put some dirt on it.
Don't feel it. Shove it down there where you can't. Well, great. I did that 15 years of my life. And look where it landed me. It landed me over a TV show having a panic attack. That's
hindsight. That wasn't the best advice from our generation.
That was a horrible advice.
Yeah.
Horrible advice. But it's part of my story. You know what I mean? And I love that. Yeah. And that's why the work that I do now is so important, because there's so many guys who are from that 35 to 50-year-olds that are like, dude, I was told this and it's false. Yeah. It's wrong. I feel like I got no time in my life. I feel like my energy is in the shitter, and the relationships that I actually want with my kids and my wife or my spouse, they're not happening because I'm working my ass off and I got nothing left over in the tank.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. We burn ourselves dry on everybody else.
But I provided and protected.
Yeah.
I will give, yep. I literally gave everything to everybody else and I gave nothing to myself.
Yeah.
And that had to change. And until I got real with myself, then it was never going to happen, because I was always going to lie. I was always going to have an excuse. I was always going to say this to a person who I didn't like lying and excuses. But the reason why I didn't like it the most is because I was the biggest one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said you were filled with worry, anxiety, anger, stress, negativity, shame, fear, just to name a few. You were coming off as Mr. Positivity, but inside you felt like you were putting on a facade. And the anxiety piece is something that I struggled with. It's something that I actually went and got seen for probably about 7 years ago or so, because I was really struggling. I was too focused on tomorrow. And it's funny, if you were to ask me, yesterday was the easiest day, but tomorrow is the most stressful. Yeah. And it was rinse, repeat every single day. But anxiety and depression, I got this from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. Most common mental illness in the U.S., affecting 40 million adults. 19% of people struggle from it. And then the scary part is only about 36% of those actually go seek treatment. And then adolescents, which is, gosh, you just think about now us as adults, you being a teacher, 13 to 18-year-olds, that is a rough time in someone's life. Bad. I would go back to pooping in diapers and drinking nasty milk than I would go back and be 13 to 18-year-old all over again. And 31.9% of adolescents within that 13 to 18-year-old range suffer from anxiety as well. Yep. This is going to be a two-part question, and I hate two-part questions, but first, your advice with your dealings with seventh graders, what advice would you have for adolescents who are struggling with anxiety? On the flip side, to our generation where we weren't really taught how to cope with it.
For that younger group, own it. It all comes back to ownership, and own your feeling. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay it's okay to have anxiety. It's okay to feel anxious about that test. It's okay to feel anxious about that. What's not okay is staying in it. That's not okay to do. And that's what I did. Again, I did it for 15 years of my life. And once you start talking about it, you have to develop systems that work for you. Everybody's different. Mine are different. If I'm feeling anxious, I got to say it. And the person my go-to is usually my wife. But if my wife's not around, it's anybody. If there's some person, I'm going to say it to you, because I have to get it out. When it's out in the open, I can deal with it. Yeah. When it's not, then I hide it and I go back to old habits. We run patterns, our subconscious run patterns, our conscious runs patterns. We go back to what's comfortable and familiar. What's comfortable and familiar for me is to just ball it up, push it down, act like it doesn't exist. What does that do? It hits me physically. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm going to have diarrhea. I'm going to do all that stuff. So I just don't, I got to say it. Once I say it and I release it, then I can actually feel. I didn't allow myself to feel. So those young people, that's what you got to do. You got to actually have a conversation about it. Understand it's okay to feel. It's not okay to stay in it. Mm-hmm. Suffering is choosing to stay in it. And we're all going to feel pain, but dude, don't stay in it to feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes with our society today is the way we have it. I think the bad thing that I see, and we always say about like labels and stuff, that was a big thing. Don't label people. But the problem is we're using these labels to get attention.
Yeah.
And that's the bad thing, is because we'll take attention. I'm holding my phone up. We'll take attention however we can. And this and that, it's some of it's glorified, some of it's used, and I see it in schools all the time. And it's just, man, the bottom line is you got to figure out who you are. Mm-hmm. When you know who you are exactly, not what you do, who you are, like what are those 2 to 3 attributes to yourself? This is how I'm going to show up every single day. Mine's ownership, mine's love, and mine's living. That's how I show up every single day. And once you know that, man, that's so freeing. Like anxiety levels in me drop drastically when I realize when I make any decision in my life, it comes down to those 3 things. Like you asking me to come on here today, it came down to those 3 things. And it was a yes, yes, and yes. So I'm doing it. Nice. If it's a yes, no, yes, it ain't all 3.
Yep.
Like, is it hard? Yeah, but that's my boundary. Like I make boundaries, I set them, and I not keep them. It's not flip-flopping back and forth. That's my boundary. That's how I make decisions. It sucks at first, but the more I get it, the freer I am, the freer I feel, the more simplistic. My life is very simple. It's just those 3 things. My wife asked me to do something. That. If it comes to finances, those 3 things. If it comes to my kids, it's those 3 things. That's how I make decisions. That's how I teach. That's how I live. I don't go anywhere else. And the nicest thing is I used to be somebody else for everybody else, and I had to figure out what I told that person or who I showed up to be. Now I just get to show up to be me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's it. That's it. So those younger generation, dude, just own your shit, love your story, live with purpose. Our generation, exact same thing.
Yeah.
But the problem is with our generation, the younger generation, there's time to mold. Our generation, dude, we got people that are just stuck.
Closed-minded.
Stuck. Dude. Yeah. Like you sit like when I get a guy who's like, how's it going? Like, all good, man, all good. I'm like, you're lying out your ass, dude. I'm like, you're lying.
Living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. I'm like, dude, you lying, man. You lying. And like, no. Like, how do I know that? Because, dude, I said it. I said it for years.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's good, man. Kicking butt. Like, come on,
it's
man.
Stressful too, like living like that.
Yeah, dude, every day.
It is.
We wonder why, like, we do the same thing, because, and that's just like guys, like I deal with the working family man, you know, in the brotherhood. That's our guys. And why? Because that was me. But what did I do? I used my job to show how my worth was in the universe. My job didn't show me. So that PSSA test score, I put so much weight on that test score that my students performed this way from a state standardized test that I couldn't sit there and do for 2.5 hours, because that number or that money amount told me who I was. Mm-hmm. No. I tell me who I am, you know, and that's where it's like, we got guys that just, well, I've done it for so long. How can I change? Because you can. That's why. Because you just can, and you should. If you're intentional. If you're living a life going, this is not what I wanted to change.
Yeah.
But you got to take the effort to change. This shit ain't going to happen. We want quick fixes. It ain't going to happen, dude. You're going to have to get deep. You're going to have to get raw. That's why when I talk with guys that are like, listen, if you're going to go through this program, you're going to need to do this. Like, you're going to need to be real raw. Like, if you give me a bunch of BS, like, I'm just going to kick you out, and I'm going to tell you right now, just don't even do it, because I don't have time and you don't have time to waste. Like, don't waste your own time feeding yourself a bunch of lies. If you're going to do that, just go over there and do it by yourself.
Yeah.
But what we do here is to get down to the bottom of what is it that you really want to live, because you got one shot at this thing. That's it. You got one shot at being a husband. You got one shot at being a dad. You got one shot at being a man. You got one shot at this earth. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to step across that line and lie? Or are you going to step across that line and be you? Like, that's what I want to know. If you're willing to be you, cool. I'll work with you. If you're not, I don't have time for it.
Speaking of working with people, Purpose Infused Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. Talk to us about the podcast, where people can find you as well.
You can just type in Purpose Infused Brotherhood on any social media. It'll come up, the website, the web too. It basically, what we help the working family man That's what we do, because the working family man lots of time, again, for me was, man, I felt like I had no time to do anything. I felt like because of that, I had no energy. And because of those two things, I was like, dude, I'm not building the relationship I really want with my wife and with my kids. Because when I get home from work, I'm freaking burnt. And I'm just like, I like to take a nap. And then you got housework, and then you got all this. You're running around to kids to this, and this, and this. And you're just like, oh my God, like you're that's what you feel like. If I could describe it in a sound, it would just be you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what we help men really do, is dive into when you show up and what's your line. And when you step across that line, how do you show up? When you know how you show up, think about that energy you get back in your life. Think about that time. If you're not making all those decisions that you don't need to make, and you're saying yes to everything, think about all the time you get back when you're like, no, man, it doesn't match this, this, and this to my life. If it doesn't, all right, I ain't doing it. Now it's hard, but that's why we're here. That's why the Brotherhood is here, to help you walk through that journey. That's why I'm here, to help you say, hey, what is that line? When I put my foot down on the day, what is that line I'm crossing? What does that mean? Why do I do that? And that allows you to be purposeful and intentional with your life. And that, think about the energy, man, when you have that. Think about when you're more intentional with your wife, with your spouse, with your kids. Like, your kids have different life because you're more intentional instead of just tired. Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. So that's what we do. We have a community that we have guys just connected there. And then also outside, the next level up with the community, guys get connected with the community. We share those things. We have those conversations that men really need to be having. This week we're talking about the poverty mindset versus the wealth mindset. Basically the growth or the scarcity versus the abundance mindset. Looking at finances and stuff there. With our man LA, the blind master, like, he's awesome with that stuff. So he's going to be on the podcast. We got this. We got a bunch of big hitters on our podcast about different topics that men go through, and that's what we deal with. So we have a topic each week. We jump on. We grow together. We build together. We battle together. We do those things together because that's what makes us better. Iron sharpens iron, so do men sharpen men. So we do that, but then the next level above that too is then I do some group coaching as well. Guys who really want to narrow down, like, hey, what is my purpose? How do we do this? And then I also do some one-on-one coaching with really defining that purpose for guys who really want to be like, hey, what in the hell am I here for? And how can I live every single day on purpose? So you want to get down to the nitty-gritty, like, boom, that's that one-on-one. But again, I have that group coaching level that we dive in there. Guys want a little bit more than just the community as well. So we got the community, we have that group piece, and then we have that one-on-one piece that we do too. So all focused on let's get you some more time back in your life. Let's feel like you have time instead of no time. Let's get those energy levels freaking through the roof. So you're waking up going, hell yeah, dude, I get today. I don't have to do this shit. I get today.
I'm ready.
Dude, let's have an amazing freaking relationship with your spouse, an amazing relationship with your kids. Let's do that instead of just having a relationship. Just let's be active in both of those, so that your spouse can look at you and be like, yeah, that's it. Or your kids can look at you and be proud. And that's what we really want.
That's awesome. And y'all got some good stuff, especially on Instagram. I heard one, this was a while back. I think y'all talked about like purpose versus passion.
Yeah.
So some really good info. Folks will have the link in the episode description. Definitely check them out. Give them some love, give them some support. And last question here. You talked about the things that you took away from your grandfather, from your father. When someone talks about you 50 years from now, what is your legacy?
My legacy is what I leave right now. I wouldn't, because that's a lot. One of the biggest lessons I learned is it's not what you leave behind, it's what you leave now. And what I leave now is owning my shit, is loving my story, and living with purpose. And because I've been able to, over the past 5 years, to really put that in place in my own life and help other guys do that, like, I believe right now, if I died right now, like I had a heart attack right on your show.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I don't want to. No. But I believe if my funeral was today, that's what people would say about me. Yeah. And just because that's the way I've chosen to live my life, because I know who I am. And those things right there, ownership, love, and living. I think that is what everybody would say.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this. I can't thank you enough for being a guest here on the show. Folks, go check them out. Purpose Infused Brotherhood. We're going to have the link down here in the episode description. And that is going to wrap up episode 90.
Yeah. That's
Making
awesome.
our way towards episode 100, which will come to you next Monday. But that is going to conclude this episode of the Shadows Podcast.